Good morning, and thank you for joining me on the Path to Liberty. This is the Fast Friday edition of the show for November 6th, 2020. And on this episode, I'm going to start out by sharing with you some quotes from the founders on the dangers of ignorance, the importance of knowledge to the future of liberty. Then I'm going to quote Samuel Adams. I'm re-quoting him from a previous episode that I've done recently and focus on a major two-prong challenge for the future of liberty. And then I'm going to share with you, and this is far from an exhaustive list, but 3 major ways that ignorance today is destroying liberty right now. And I've got a handful of resources that I hope will help you break through that. But first of all, before getting to that, my name is Michael Bolden. We broadcast live every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at 9:30 a.m. Pacific Time from here in my home office and studio in downtown Los Angeles for the 10th Amendment Center. Our show homepage has everything you need to follow this show, all the archives, all the platforms we're on, video and audio. On individual episodes, I include a ton of links, and I'm going to have a bunch of references on this episode as well, so you can read and learn more on your own time. And you can even find our membership program where you can put your financial faith behind our work for as little as $2 a month, and we make it go a long, long way in support of the Constitution and liberty. All that and more over at 10thamendmentcenter.com/path to liberty. It's all spelled out. 10thamendmentcenter.com/path to liberty. And I couldn't be more grateful for you spending some of your time with me today. Thank you so much for being here, whether it's day one for you or you've been here for every episode since we started this show. It really doesn't matter. Thank you so much for being here. I'm so grateful for it. But since it's Fast Friday, I promise to not take up too much of your time. Let's see if I can get this out to you in the next 10 to 15 minutes. And to start, I want to go to a guy that I rarely quote, but I think has a lot of interesting stuff. Here from 1786, founder Benjamin Rush put it this way: freedom can only exist in the society of knowledge. Freedom can only exist in the society of knowledge. Not is most likely to exist or is has a greater chance, but can only exist or can exist only in the society of knowledge. Without learning, he wrote, men are incapable of knowing their rights, and whether it's men, women, children, adults, everywhere in between, human beings are incapable of knowing their rights without knowledge. And as I quoted recently in a previous episode, Thomas Jefferson in a letter to Charles Yancey, this is January of 1816, he says, if a nation expects to be ignorant and free, it expects what never was and never will be. And I don't think anything has changed in history. With ignorance comes tyranny and despotism. With knowledge, with wisdom, you have a chance for liberty. It's not guaranteed, but there is a chance. Now, on Monday's episode, I closed out with one of my favorite quotes from Samuel Adams. Here he is writing, I believe it was as Candidus in the Boston Gazette in 1771. He says, the truth is, all might be free if they valued freedom and defended it as they ought. And this tells me we have a major two-pronged challenge in front of us, and it really is an education problem. We have to understand what freedom, what liberty is all about. You can't value it if you don't know what it is or how it impacts lives or specific issues. And then, of course, knowing how to defend it. And in that episode on Monday, I gave some examples of how to do that. Maybe I can pull that up here in just a moment. But of course, when you get down to it, this is really all about education. This two-pronged issue is about education. You have to understand freedom and understand how to defend it, how to support it, how to expand it. But the powers that be love it when people are ignorant. And here's another Samuel Adams quote. Here he is writing as Valerius Poplicola is how my notes have it. In the Boston Gazette again, this is October 1772, he put it this way: it is in the interest of tyrants to reduce the people to ignorance and vice. Of course, he's saying basically the same thing. He's adding the vice part of it because he's big on morals, but he's adding the same kind of message from Jefferson, from Benjamin Rush, and from many others throughout that period. Tyrants love it when people are dumbed down and ignorant. Of course, that's why probably government loves to run the education system. I learned very little in the government-run schools other than every problem had a government solution, and that's the only way to deal with it. That was Samuel Adams. And very similar to that was John Jay in a letter to Thomas Jefferson in October of 1786. And it wasn't the exact same language, but he said it this way: the knaves and fools of this world are forever in alliance. Now, is he referring to people who are ignorant, who are fools? Well, maybe. But the knaves are the people who are going to take advantage of people who are foolish, who lack knowledge, who lack strength, whatever it may be. And they are forever in alliance, whether wittingly or not. And that brings me to what I want to cover next. That is 3 big ways that I see ignorance destroying liberty right before our very eyes. Probably has been doing this for a long, long time. And I've got a handful of resources. Again, this is far from exhaustive. And these are just a few things that I've used over the years, or I look to on a regular basis now, to just get some tidbits here and there, to fill my head with more knowledge, maybe get different perspectives from other people, not just 10th Amendment Center stuff. So I'm going to be referencing some outside sources. Now, first of all, one of the biggest problems we face is that most people have no clue how to read the Constitution at all. Most people at all. What they generally start out with is their own political goals, their own political views, or they start out with, I support particular politician or party or candidate or whatever. And then they look to find something that backs them up. It's basically confirmation bias. They start out with a position that they want to support, and then they look for a quote or a passage or some expert that validates their already held view, and then that's that. They don't ever actually research it. And so we end up with a problem that John Dickinson warned us about here in number 6 of his letters from a farmer in Pennsylvania in response to the hated Townshend Acts of 1767. He wrote these throughout 67 and 1768, and he put it this way. Oh, I should pull this up on the screen. All artful rulers who strive to extend their power beyond its just limits endeavor to give their attempts as much semblance of legality as possible. So if people don't actually understand how to read the Constitution, they're far more easily swayed by just powerful legal arguments by so-called experts. You even hear people in really powerful positions say, well, I don't have an answer to that. That's for the lawyers. Your average idiot, you guys, you can't do anything. I can't even do it. We got to just leave the question to the lawyers. And that tells us that no one should even look to it. We should only look to the experts. And that's what we end up with then, is we have a bunch of artful rulers making legal cases to expand their own power over and over and over. And in time, he says, those, and this is back to Dickinson, those who succeed them, the follow-up politician, rulers, artful rulers is redundant, really. Those who succeed them may venture to go a little further, for each new encroachment will be strengthened by a former. This is the problem of precedent. You start one thing, and the new baseline is where they left things off. New politicians, new rulers, new government people never look to the power handed to them and say, well, let's get rid of all of this stuff. They use that as a baseline and always grow it from there. Dickinson again says, that which is now supported by examples, growing old, will become an example itself, and thus support fresh usurpations. Rinse and repeat. So as long as we look to the experts to tell us what the Constitution means, this is going to be the end result. We shouldn't be surprised that we live under the largest government in history today. And so one of the resources that I hope you'll check out is a previous episode. They're not all outside the 10th Amendment Center, but I covered this in July. Constitution Research Guide, How to Read a 19th Century Legal Document. It might be a little geeky, a little heady, but I think it's very important for you to look at that or listen to that episode. I will link to it in the show notes. I've actually promised myself, and probably publicly as well, that I'm actually going to write a handbook on how to do this so people can pass this around, maybe even do a free PDF version, but it's slow going for me. I'm not really a writer, so we'll see if I can get this put together over time, hopefully. But another one that I want to recommend is Mike Meharry's great book, which we don't even carry at 10th Amendment Center yet for some dumb reason, but it's called Constitution Owner's Manual, the real Constitution politicians don't want you to know about. If you want to take, this is a really nice kind of handbook way or a guide of how to go through the Constitution, but I do think you have to have it in conjunction. Anytime you do stuff like this, you're still relying on someone to tell you what something means. And Meharry does a really good job on this. But unfortunately, most people only go that far. We really need to have the foundational principles to understand how to read the document when we don't have an answer to a question that may come up politically over time. So that's why I so strongly recommend this episode on the Constitution Research Guide. So that's number one. People are totally ignorant about how to read the Constitution. Number two, well, we all went to government school or government-approved private school even, and so we start out with a horrible understanding of markets, free markets, how the economy runs, and basic economics. Here's how John Taylor of Caroline put it. This was in 1814. He said, "The present age is cajoled to tax and enslave itself by the error of believing that it taxes and enslaves future ages to enrich itself." Again, the present age is tricked into doing this. "And future ages," he goes on, "submit to taxation and slavery by being seduced into an erroneous opinion that the present age have a right to inflict upon them these calamities." This idea that you can kick the can down the road and just people have a right to do this, and maybe it won't even cause any harm. Maybe some people don't even care what'll happen. But this has been an ongoing problem for a long, long time. And one of the places that I go to as often as possible to have some understanding of how markets and government intervention into them and the money supply and the Federal Reserve and on is the Mises Institute. I'm friends with so many good people over there. Mises, MISES.org. They have a whole section here on books. They've got tons of free books in PDF, HTML, EPUB, on and on. And I've just pulled up one segment here. I will link to this in the show notes. So many books on the Austrian economics. There's Bastiat capitalism, development of economics, depressions, where they come from, Murray Rothbard, and on. There's just an endless amount of reading. I have not read all of their stuff, not even close, but there is a constant flow of information that you can keep digging into, and there's tons of stuff for free. Now, if you want hard copies, of course, you can buy stuff from Mises or on other sites, but this is a great place to start. And I also have a really interesting podcast that I wanted to share. I mean, it's the Peter Schiff Show podcast. He does cover a lot of political stuff, and he has some kind of social things, but if you listen to his podcast on a regular basis, he talks about how things are going in the economy, how government spending, national debt, and all these things are causing problems. He talks about sound money and gold, and I think it's going to give you a lot of interesting tidbits. Whether you love the guy or not, I think it's a really great podcast. It's one that I listen to basically anytime he's got an episode come out. And so those are some resources on markets and the economy, on money, banking, and the like. And that brings me to number three. Most people really are clueless about the basic principles of liberty. They're clueless about freedom, and that's what Samuel Adams was talking about in September or in October of 1771, when he was basically saying, you know, people will be free if they valued it and defended it. So they have to understand it to value it. And here from John Dickinson again, this was in 1776, he said, "Our liberties do not come from charters, for these are only the declaration of pre-existing rights." Or Thomas Jefferson, as I've cited so many times, "A free people claim their rights as derived from the laws of nature and not as the gift of their chief magistrate." And I've got two resources that I think will help give you some more, basically some ammo, we'll say, on the base principles of liberty. Here's a podcast from the Future of Freedom Foundation. That's FFF.org. Jacob Hornberger and Sheldon Richmond do a great podcast called The Libertarian Angle. They're generally 30 to 50 minutes, and I have enjoyed most of those episodes. They're always pretty challenging and pretty great, talking about the advantages of liberty. And another one is a book, and I'm not sure if it's dated at this point, but it's definitely something that was very really important to me as I started learning about this stuff. And it was from the late, great Harry Brown, this book, Why Government Doesn't Work, How Reducing Government Will Bring Us Safer Cities, Better Schools, Lower Taxes, More Freedom, and Prosperity for All. He basically makes the case for freedom, for liberty being better for all these various issues. And I loved it. I'm sure there's a lot of great tidbits in there still that have impact today. Anyways, I hope you guys found this interesting. I hope it was educational. I hope it was fun to watch or listen to. I really appreciate you being here. Please consider, if you support the show, smashing the like button, leaving a review on Apple Podcasts or any other podcast platform you may be listening on, sharing, leaving some comments. All that stuff helps us trigger the algorithm of the platform you watch or listen on and show the program to more people. And of course, if you want to support us financially, I would be very grateful for any consideration you can give to joining us as a member. Please do not feel obligated, but it starts out as little as $2 a month over at 10thamendmentcenter.com/members. Again, 10thamendmentcenter.com/members for all the details over there. And again, thank you for any consideration on that. I really appreciate you being here today. I hope you have a great weekend, and I'll see you next week here on the Path to Liberty.